discrimination at the city, but the public utility, which was then known as City Public Service Board, now called CPS Energy, and at Kellyfield, that the highest level that Chicano employers could get in there was at the ditch level, the streets, and for all the generation of Chicanos that came out of World War II and the Korean War, that went into civil service, that was a big complaint they had because they could never advance. They could never advance, and so those were issues that were beginning to gel. Right, and so the Fama group especially focused on that, and we supported all of that. But then a very catalyzing event is what the farm worker movement that sort of drew in. It was a safe moral activity that people could engage on. Everyone. How can you oppose not helping people who are down, way down there? Mm-hmm. So that's why the religious types, Chicanos who were religiously, devotees, they were outraged. So that's why the Bishops' Committee was involved with it. That immobilized a lot of people who normally would not be involved. So we all, we were into that. So we supported. We were everywhere, supporting and of course making those outrageous, comments publicly. But the first activity that we pulled off as MAYO, there were three guys, Jose Angel, myself, and Nacho, and we picketed at the Alamo on July 4th, 1967.
As MAYO?
As MAYO.
Okay.
That was first public action that we took as MAYO.
Okay.
And each one of us had a picket sign. All three of us wore suits and ties, and said, I had a sign that said, "What about liberation for la raza?" And that caught the attention of one right-wing Chicano in there. It's a 4th of July celebration, right?
Yeah, right.
And this guy comes over and looks at my sign. "What race are you talking about?" I said, "Well, which race do you belong to?" And he says, "Well, I'm an American. I said, "So am I." So, and then he says, "You know what? I want to get the police to arrest you." I said, "Go ahead." And he actually went and dragged the cop over there. He says, "I want you to arrest him." And the cop told him, "I can't arrest him. He's got a right to do that." Guess what? He's got a right. He's got a right to do that.
And was there publicity, newspaper publicity about that?
It was caught on, but that was our objective to start getting publicity for MAYO.
Okay.
And there was no controversy about it. There were some media reports. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was doing some search on the net, and I landed at one of those tourist sites, and there's a guy, tourism in San Antonio. There's a guy. He said, "What you will never see, advertised in your tourist brochures," and he talks about that demonstration. So these three guys.
Wow.
But that was the first one. Then, as part of the initial strategy that we settled on to build the MAYO base for La Raza Unida was on education, is to attack the discrimination at the public schools, and because we wanted to use that, it was very, it was a no-brainer for me to see that the political power was where it's at. If you have a simple concept of majority rule, so if you control, you get to decide what to do. And so we said we had to focus on education because it was a common experience for all our families and our kids, and everybody knew that, and all families supported education for their kids. That was a given. So that's where we started focusing.
Since you've gone on that, let me ask you this, Mario. in the 1960s, there was initial rumblings about bilingual education.
About what?
Bilingual education.
Right.
Right? And very little writing about it. Certainly few actual scholars who could define bilingual education. And of course, through the years, that's been defined in a variety of ways, and it's become, in my mind, oftentimes a lot of consultants y todo eso. Do you recall any folks back then who were already researching or looking at bilingual education as part of the pedagogy for Chicanos?
Well, what I know is that the original concept evolved out of the writings and work that was being done out of UT Austin by two professors.
Okay.
One of them is was the George I. Sanchez and his colleague Herschel Manuel. They were the ones that started initially because they were concerned with the lack of educational opportunities for migrant workers. That there was a lot of discrimination. Well, the segregated system that existed for Chicanos, it was a three-part type. There's a three-peat, dimension to it. One system for whites, one for blacks, and one for Chicanos. And the Chicanos were all migrant workers here. That I researched that as part of my graduate work. My degree is in educational policy studies, so I researched all of that history, and the schools, especially the one in Del Rio, the school district, had all this buildings here, the main building. Then up here, they had a rundown, barrack for Chicano kids. And that situation there is the original basis for the LULAC lawsuits. That's where LULAC started filing those lawsuits. Through the early 30s, I believe in 1931 is the first time they filed a suit, and went on through the late 40s. Still in the late 40s, the GI Forum joins LULAC and start filing that. So they litigate for 3 decades, the 30s, the 40s, and
those were equal protection based
the
lawsuits,
50s.
right?
Like the Bastrop case?
Huh?
Like the Bastrop case in
There
48?
were several. You have that, but they have the original one is the case in called the Rio Salvatierra. So that Salvatierra has an interesting history. You can draw the parallels between that and the Edgewood suits on school finance. Time after time, the courts ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, and those guys, they always refused to implement the court orders. Anyway, so out of that, you follow that thought from Manuel and Sanchez, and then the later generation of Chicano scholars start picking it up. As far as I can remember, my memory is that the first one to articulate that plan is Jose Cardenas.
Okay.
That specifically bilingual education. I don't recall seeing any of the writings that Sanchez talked explicitly about bilingual education. They were concerned primarily with the segregation and the lack of quality and opportunity for Chicano kids.
One of the things I've tried to understand